Hi and welcome back to my channel. In my last video, I introduced you to the Hound of Christopher, and more importantly, to the young gambler. In this video, I will be reading chapter 1 of the Hound of Christopher to you. But before I get started, I would like to tell you what to expect. The Hound of Christopher is made up of 55 chapters, meaning there will be 55 videos altogether. So, if you're ready, let's get started. Chapter 1. A black Mercedes pulled up to the special front entrance parking area of the Galante Shipping Building, the world's third largest freight company located in the financial district of Naples. The time was precisely 8 a.m., September 22nd, 1986. Dressed in a black suit, Fernando Barry, the company's finance director, got out and quickly made his way up the walkway leading to the marble steps and revolving glass door, briefcase in hand. He was on his way to the office of the financial affairs on the 10th floor, his first day back from a 2-week vacation in Miami. "38 years old and single, he had been reared in a poor neighborhood in Milan by his erstwhile father, an alcoholic who had made a living as a street gambler, a vocation which had impacted Fernando's life at a young age. At age 15, he had been inducted into his father's gambling circles in order for him to learn and pursue a career in gambling. Though this was not a career choice his father had envisioned for his son, nevertheless, he chose this because in their neighborhood, people had one of two choices to make or earn a living: burglary or street gambling. Being the obvious choice, the latter had Fernando dreaming big dreams. Dreams that stretched beyond living in a neighborhood that was inching deeper into decadence and violence. His dream was to play rich, influential gamblers whose stakes were often in the hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars, which would eventually make him rich. Fernando had a clear vision of what he wanted, a vision in which he surpassed his father's meager earnings in the street. In order to realize his goal, he needed to master his trade, and the only person who could help him do that was his father. Then, just 6 weeks after he had debuted in the street as a gambler, his father took ill and suddenly died, leaving Fernando with no mentor to help him advance his career. On the night his father passed away, Fernando was surprised to learn his father had a different plan for his son. This plan was for him to become a winemaker who would produce wine under the brand name of Dubray. The Dubray Company was a successful company that originally had been founded by his father many years before he had been born. Due to his father's big appetite for gambling and booze, the company had slowly amassed such huge debts that he was forced out of business. Though his father had lived in penury, he knew a day would eventually come when Dubray would again assume its place in the industry. The person his father had planned to make this happen was his son, Fernando. In order for Fernando to take on the challenge to succeed as a business owner, his father knew his son would need to reunite with his mother, whom he knew would help him make the mental and educational transitions he needed. Still grieving the loss of his father, and somewhat puzzled by the new possibilities his father had opened for him, Fernando left his neighborhood to go live with his mother. In his possession, he carried the written instructions his father had given him as to how his mother was to guide him into success. A month later, through his mother's contacts, Fernando got a job with a winemaker. This man was a repentant mobster that used to work for a local mob chieftain. The choice to work for this particular man was in accordance with his father's instructions. His father wanted his son to have a mentor he could look up to for guidance. Long before his father had envisioned this particular path for him, Fernando had already chosen what he wanted to be. Therefore, he determined not to give up his previous dream of gambling for something his father had desired for him and which he wasn't sure would succeed. Not more than a few days after he had begun his new job, he was back on the street again in order to gamble. But the people in his new neighborhood did not embrace gambling, and so Fernando was unable to succeed at his trade. Hoping he could gravitate to people of his kind, he traveled from one neighborhood to the other. With no luck in his travels and money running short, Fernando knew he had to do something to get out of his financial dilemma. His urgent need for money soon had him hobnobbing with men and women of the underworld who made easy money. His friendship with them led him to the doorstep of his mother's neighbor, who recruited people for a criminal outfit that specialized in printing and circulating counterfeit money. 3 days after he met the recruiter, Fernando was introduced to Duccio Moretti, the leader of that criminal gang, in order to discuss the possibilities of working for him. Their meeting, though brief, ended with a warm welcome, and soon Fernando began to get a sense of the money he could make by associating with them. Within a few months, the young Fernando, who had arrived at his mother's with virtually nothing, had much money at his disposal and enough to do whatever he wanted. Although his mother wasn't quite sure how he was making his money, her intuition led her to believe her son had become part of organized crime. Afraid her son might wind up in prison or dead in the streets someday, his mother turned to a policeman she knew who was in Milan's Special Crimes Unit. An old acquaintance of hers, she asked him to help her straighten up her son. A day after her mother's passionate plea, 2 policemen arrived at their home to question Fernando about his source of income and the counterfeits in circulation. With the threat of a long prison sentence in one of Milan's notorious prisons, Fernando began to talk about the operations and various clients. A few days after he had talked, all his colleagues were rounded up by the police. Having been promised a suspended prison sentence, Fernando took the stand and testified against his criminal gang. Within only a few hours after his infamous testimony, he learned Duccio Moretti had hired someone to kill both his mother and him. The threat was that they would be dead in less than 24 hours. Knowing the man was more than capable of following through with his threat, Fernando did not hang around to verify the information. Before the crack of dawn, he and his mother fled to Naples. But Naples was no safe haven for them, because Fernando knew his former colleagues were part of a well-connected criminal organization that had contacts there and just about everywhere else in the country. With that knowledge in mind, upon their arrival in Naples, he went directly to seek protection from Ray Lucci, the son of a local mob chieftain who had worked at his father's as his underboss in an organization that controlled Naples' underworld activities. After a long conversation with Lucci, Fernando and his mother were assured of his protection. But as most things in life, nothing is free. Their protection came at a price. Fernando was to operate in the shadows as a rogue in the Galante Shipping Company. We've now come to the end of the segment, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then.